What's up, everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're going to be playing more of the Trial of the Grasses seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which every unit that we play will get damaged by 2 and then boosted by 4, unless it's a Witcher, in which case it will only get boosted by 4 and not get damaged by 2. And today we have a new Skellige deck to check out, which is one that perhaps is the most requested deck that I've had thus far, so let's give it a look. So today we'll be playing a Patricidal Fury Skellige deck, which will focus on playing as many Witchers as possible in order to maximize the amount of boosting that we're getting from this seasonal event. And the first card in this deck will be Geralt Yrden, which is extremely powerful because it can reset the power of all units in a row, and because there's a lot of boosting in the seasonal event, we will get a ton of value out of this, so this is almost a guaranteed win for a round, as long as our opponent doesn't have a Geralt Yrden of their own, in which case it could be anyone's game. Next we have Arnaghad, which when we have 4 or fewer cards in our hand, whenever our opponent plays a unit, that unit will get damaged by Arnaghad's power, and then Arnaghad will get damaged by that unit's power, so they will basically trade damaging each other. Now that does mean that Arnaghad would take a lot of damage in the process, however, we have a way of addressing that later on. Next, we have Vesemir Mentor, which will boost all Witchers on the board by 1. However, if we wait until we have 5 or fewer cards in our hand, then he will also boost all Witchers in our hand and in our deck. And that is key because we have a ton of Witchers in this deck, so this is another one of our best cards. Next, we have Geralt of Rivia, which will destroy an enemy unit with 9 or more power, and there's one unit in particular that we're going to be setting our sights on with Geralt. That is likely to be Leo, and we'll give that a closer look in just a minute. Next we have Sukrus, and Sukrus will prevent the unit from the left from taking any damage. This is one of the few non-Witcher cards that we have. However, this is the card that sets up Arnaghad. As long as we play Sukrus next to Arnaghad, then Arnaghad will not take damage whenever our opponent plays a unit, and that can be a great way to shut off our opponent's deck. Next we have the Skellige location, which will spawn in a Bear Witcher of some variety, either a Bear Witcher Mentor, Bear Witcher Quartermaster, or Bear Witcher Adept, and we will almost certainly be going with the Bear Witcher Quartermaster for reasons we will discuss later on. There also is an order ability to heal adjacent units by 3, however it is very unlikely that we will use that because so many of our units will get boosted when we play them that very rarely are we ever going to see our units below their base strength. Next we have Idarran of Ulivo, who made an appearance in our previous Northern Realms deck because he is so good at spawning in additional units. The first time that we spawn a unit on our turn, Idarran will spawn an additional copy of that unit in Idarran's row with just 1 base strength. Because any non-Witcher will get damaged by 2 as soon as it enters the playing field, that means that those non-Witchers will get immediately destroyed and won't do anything for us. However, as long as we are spawning in 1 strength Witchers, then those will actually get boosted up to 5 base strength, which does make Idarran of Ulivo quite powerful in this seasonal event. We will look at additional ways to spawn in those Witchers in just a second. However, worth noting that we actually have so much spawning ability with this deck that we want to be mindful of running out of space. Next we have Black Blood, which will destroy the next enemy unit that gets boosted, and because every unit that our opponent plays will get boosted, we're hoping that this will destroy the next unit that our opponent plays. There is potentially some ability for our opponent to work around this and boost one of their weaker cards and avoid getting one of their stronger cards destroyed, but hopefully we'll find ourselves catching our opponents off guard with this card. Next we have Leo, and like I said before, this is likely to be our card with the highest strength because it will boost itself by 1 for every Witcher that we control, and we will have a ton of Witchers out there. So this is a card that we'll want to play late on in a round once we already have as many Witchers out there as possible, competing with perhaps only Yrden to be last or maybe second to last card that we play. Next we have the 3 Wolf School Witchers, Eskel, Vesemir, and Lambert, and whenever we play one of them, when we have 4 or fewer cards in our hand, it will summon the rest of them from our deck onto the playing field. And because they are all Witchers, they will all get boosted by 4, so they will be quite powerful in total, as long as we can make sure that we don't have multiple of them in our hand simultaneously. We want to keep only one in our hand, and the rest hanging out in our deck. Next we have Selective Mutation, which will draw a card with Adrenaline of our choice from our deck, and then shuffle a card from our hand back into our deck. So this allows us to manipulate our hand a little bit and make sure that we get the perfect Witcher card for the situation. Does also spawn in a Witcher student in each allied row, and these are some of the cards that we're going to be spawning a ton of. Because they're Witchers, they will get boosted by 4, making them 6 strength apiece, so this is 12 strength, in addition to some control over what we have in our hand, and if you combine it with Idarran of Ulivo, means even more Witcher students. Next we have Berengar, who is a 9 base strength Witcher, so when we play him, he will get boosted all the way up to 13, and if we have no other Witchers in the row in which we play him, he will get destroyed, so we want to play him a little bit later on in the round, once we have enough Witchers out there that we're not concerned about, say, our opponent destroying the only other Witcher in the row, and then Berengar goes down as well, so middle of the round type of card to play. Next we have Freya's Blessing, which will play a bronze scale unit from our graveyard and give it doomed, and there is one very clear target for who we want this card to be, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Next, we have Red Haze, which will damage an enemy unit by an adjacent unit's power, and because there are going to be a lot of strong units out there, we're hoping that we can take out one of our opponent's strongest units this way, as long as there are two big units right next to each other. Next, we have Armor Up, which will damage an enemy unit by 2, and then spawn 3 Witcher students in the opposite row, damage them each by 1, and then give them 1 armor. Would normally mean, in the standard game set, just 1 strength apiece, 3 of them in total for 3 strength. That's not that impressive. However, because they are Witchers, in this seasonal event, they will all get boosted by 4, meaning that they are 5 strength apiece, so 15 strength across all of the Witcher students, 2 damage, so on net, 17 total value for 5 provision cost card is crazy good. And because this is spawning in those students, that means that this can also give us some Idarran of Ulivo synergies. But one thing to note with this is it is very quickly going to fill up our rows, so we can run out of space very quickly as well. Next, we have the Bear Witcher, which will damage itself by 3 whenever we play it. However, if we have 4 or fewer cards in our hand, then it will also damage an enemy unit by 3 as well. This is one of our not so great cards that, for the most part, we probably want to avoid having in our hand. Next, we have the Bear Witcher Quartermaster, which is arguably the best card in this deck. The reason for that is because it has 4 base strength, and it's a Witcher, so when we play it, it'll get boosted by an additional 4, bringing it up to 8. Then its order ability will damage an ally unit by 1, which doesn't sound great. However, it spawns in a Witcher student to that same row, and we can use it twice. And like we were saying earlier, those Witcher students may start out weak. In this case, we'll get a 2 strength Witcher student, but it'll get boosted up by 4 to 6 total. So that means that with 2 of them, that's 12 strength. Then add in the 8 strength from the Bear Witcher Quartermaster himself, and we're looking at 20 total strength from a 5 provision cost unit, as long as we can target someone with that ability that either has armor or is next to Sukrus and won't take any damage. But even if we can't do that, it's still 18 power, which is really good. But again, this is another instance of us spawning in a ton of units, and so could synergize with Yrden of Ulivo, but we need to be wary of running out of space. Next, we have the Bear Witcher Adept, which when we play it, it will damage itself by 4, but because it's Witcher, it will immediately boost itself by 4, bringing itself back up to its base 7 strength. Then at the end of our turn, if it is at full strength, it will give itself 1 armor, whereas if it's damaged, it will heal itself by 1. Because it will get itself back up to 7 strength immediately, it will immediately start giving itself armor. So this is a good target for those Quartermasters. However, for the most part, this is one of our weaker cards. Probably still want to avoid having this in our hand if we can. Lastly, we have the Terror Crew Axe-weilder, which, although another card that we don't really want to have in our hand, it's not the end of the world if we need to play it. It's surprisingly decent. It is not a Witcher, meaning that it will damage itself by 2 and then boost itself by 4, and that is actually beneficial in this case because it will damage an enemy unit by 2, and then if it is exposed, meaning if it's losing all of its armor, which it will do when it damages itself by 2, then it will also damage a random enemy unit by 2. So that means that in total, this will have 6 strength and 4 damage for net 10, which is still not that bad for a 4 provision cost card. So there's a look at the deck, and like I said, it will have a ton of Witchers, but the deck's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness. We want to be very mindful of how many cards we have out on the playing field because we could find ourselves running out of space before the end of the round. So we want to bear that in mind and potentially pass a little bit earlier than we might otherwise pass in order to make sure that we don't find ourselves unable to play any cards. Okay, so it looks like our first opponent here will be another Skellige person, and we will go first. And to start things off with here, we have a couple of Terror Crew Axe-weilders. We'd like to get rid of those. Let's dump them both. We get a Quartermaster. Certainly a nice pickup with our last switch here. Thinking either Bear Witcher or Bear Witcher Adept. Both of those are probably a little bit subpar. We do have a lot of ability to spawn in those Witcher students, so we have to be a little bit mindful of that, especially after trying into another one of those Quartermasters. We may need to pass a little bit on the early side here because we're just going to have so many Witcher students out there that we're going to run out of space very quickly here. Let's lead off with the Adept, because that'll be a good target for the Quartermasters to hit with their order, because it'll have some armor. That way we don't have to worry about actually dealing damage to ourselves at all. But we're just counting up how many of those Witcher students we're going to end up getting between 2 Quartermasters, the location which will spawn in another Quartermaster, all of whom can create 2 Witcher students apiece, and then the armor up, which we have 2 of. Both of those give us 3 Witcher students apiece, so that's already, I think, far more than the space that we can allocate in one round. So for that reason, there's definitely not a lot of room in which to play these cards that we're ideally going to put out there. And okay, yeah, our opponent's starting out with a Bear Witcher Quartermaster of their own. Not terribly surprising. I mean, it is nice to get the Adept out there first in order to have the target for those order abilities, so I think I do still prefer the order in which we played our cards to the order in which our opponent is maybe playing their cards, but we'll see what they have next. Then next will probably be another Quartermaster or the location. Take your pick. It is technically ideal to say the location for, say, if we were to get Idarran of Ulivo in a future round, that'd be preferable. So maybe we go for the second Quartermaster instead. We also do have ways of getting the Quartermasters back out of our deck from our... We do also have ways of getting the Quartermasters from our graveyard back into the playing field. Oneiromancy. Okay, well, this will be telling. What do they choose to get here? Oh, Oneiromancy into Selective Mutation. That's interesting. I mean, you could have just taken whatever card you wanted to get with Oneiromancy directly, but I suppose, you know, it does get you the Witcher students out there as well. And also gets rid of a card in your hand that maybe you didn't particularly want. So yeah, I'm thinking we go with the Bear Witcher Quartermaster next. Let's play you. And then now that we have some armor on the Bear Witcher Adept, it does make it an easy target for hitting it with the original Quartermaster's Order ability. Get in some of those Witcher students. And then, conveniently, that Witcher Adept will get more armor and likely be the target of the second Quartermaster's Order ability as well. And now they're using armor up. Okay, yep, looking very similar to what we're going with here. They get some Witcher students of their own to add to the couple that they had to begin with. Then, we could use armor up ourselves here, but like we were saying, things are getting very crowded very quickly here. Fortunately, those Witcher students that we are creating here, they do have some armor there, and we only had one armor on our Adept, so we'll hit that one as well. And since we'll run out of space, we'll use our tactic here, because we ideally want to end this round in the not-so-distant future. Getting Vesemir Mentor is not a bad idea, and then our opponent uses a second armor up of their own. So, yep, things getting very crowded on their side as well. It is largely the Order ability that's been the difference here, but we'll throw out the armor up again here, because one thing to note with Vesemir Mentor is, even if you wait until you have 5 or fewer cards in your hand, he will, sure, boost all Witchers in the playing field, your hand, and your deck, but he will not boost the Witchers that you have yet to spawn in, all the Witcher students that you get from armor up in the Quartermaster. So ideally, you get the Quartermasters out there, you get your armors up played before you play Vesemir Mentor, so that way you're totally maximizing the amount of boosting you're getting done out of that. So that's why we did it in that order there. And then Gerd's not a bad idea here, because we have so many cards, and does actually mean that temporarily our opponent has taken the lead here, but of course there is the Vesemir Mentor play, and because we have so many Witchers out there, we're getting a lot of value out of that. So ideally we'd be looking to pass probably next turn here, and well, our opponent does the hard work for us. We'll actually, yeah, just take the round 1 victory, plain and simple in that case. And we do, of course, also get some nice carryover value from having played Vesemir Mentor, whereas our opponent did not do that. So we do have a little bit of an advantage going into future rounds for that reason as well. We draw into Idarran of Ulivo, which is tempting, especially with our location, because we can get 2 Quartermasters out of that. And then we have, Arnaghad plus Sukrus, which is a great combo as well. Then, with our last card exchange, what would we like to get rid of? Maybe Black Blood. Geralt of Rivia, you could make the case, is a little bit redundant when you have it along with Sukrus plus Arnaghad, but I suppose we'll keep it just in case. And we are a card down here, so we'll pass immediately in round 2 and go into round 3 with 10 cards apiece. And, you know, they'll throw away their throwaway Bear Witcher. But it does mean with them taking the round 2 victory that they'll also go first in round 3. We'll have last say in round 3, which is a nice advantage to have, especially when we have what look to be some pretty similar decks here. And then we drew into one of the 3 Wolf School Witchers, which is definitely nice to have. But it does mean we want to be mindful of not drawing into a second one here. So we'll get Selective Mutation, which is not bad. We would potentially want to switch out something like Black Blood, but we can't really afford to do that because we could have accidentally drawn into another one of those Wolf School Witchers. And let's see. So they'll go first. And they're going to look to damage that card in all likelihood. But we'll get Yrden of Ulivo out now because we want to play our location in all likelihood next to get 2 of those Quartermasters out there and maximize the spawning. But even that is going to make us very crowded in both our melee and range rows. So even if we don't have any Quartermasters directly in our hand, even this situation is potentially cause for some concern here. The Black Blood is nice in that when it does trigger, it will actually outright remove itself, so that'll make a little bit of room for us, but Other than that, especially if you consider we have the Wolf School Witchers, those are going to take a lot of space as well, so gotta be careful of all of that. But now we have two of our Quartermasters out there, and they sure could target each other with their abilities and eat away at that one armor for some free spawning, but we would ideally like to get another target out there that either has additional armor or stays next to Sukrus and doesn't take any damage from that order at all. Okay, yep, here is more of the damage in order to get that range row boosted up, but I'm not too concerned about that because we do have Geralt Yrden there, as you see, so I think we can, if necessary, certainly reset that way. Now, Selective Mutation will spawn in a couple of Witcher students, and Idarran of Ulivo will, of course, increase the number of cards that are getting spawned in here, and we don't really have any cards that we particularly want to get into our hand, so we'll actually just get rid of the card that we drew into with the Selective Mutation and just get all those Witcher students spawned in, and that in and of itself does make it a pretty powerful play there. 17 strength off of that alone, once you consider that Idarran of Ulivo is helping us out in that regard. And they're playing a portal. We'll give them a Bear Witcher Adept, which is another decent target for the self-damage, but now we'll get Sukrus out there, and that means that we now have a much more natural target for using our order abilities on those Bear Witcher Quartermasters. And technically speaking, you do want to try to use just one of those orders per turn if you have Yrden of Ulivo out there, because remember, Yrden of Ulivo will only do the additional spawning once per turn, so you try to space that stuff out. However, on this occasion, it does mean that we're going to create even more cards in this row, both rows, and that's going to mean could be very difficult to squeeze in our remaining cards here, and we do have some nice ones we'd like to get in. We should have room for Arnaghad plus Sukrus, but it's a little bit early still for that. So I'm thinking Black Blood, like I was saying, does at least mean that once it does trigger, it will go away, give us a little bit more space, so maybe we're feeling okay for now, triggering one more round of those orders, but we might actually want to not use those remaining orders on the other Bear Witcher Quartermasters. So we're hoping that our opponent just plays a really strong card here and triggers the Black Blood, but oh, that was a clever workaround using the Quartermaster to spawn in a Witcher student, and that, of course, did get boosted because it's a Witcher, but just 6 strength, whereas we were hoping they would have played a much stronger card than that to get destroyed by Black Blood, so well played on their part. Bear Witcher, not one of their better cards, but it will deal some damage to us, and hit one of the Witcher students, I mean, that's fine. Then they get the Arnaghad coming in here. Let's put that next to Sukrus, and of course that is one of our big combos, and yes, does mean that we can still hit the card next to Sukrus to spawn in a Witcher student without actually dealing any damage to ourselves, but as you can see, that range row is basically full at this point, and if we're looking at trying to get those Wolf School Witchers in there, there's not enough room to get all of them out in either row at this point, so in some ways, we actually want our opponent to destroy one of our cards here, but other than that, there's not really any way to squeeze in all of those Wolf School Witchers. We have Geralt Yrden, we definitely want to have space for him, so we probably want to prioritize that over the Wolf School Witchers. Geralt of Rivia, we have some potential targets for that, certainly some units at 9 or more strength, and then Berengar has high strength, but is maybe on the lower end of priority as well, so definitely want to prioritize the Geralts, and then don't forget we also have our leader ability as well, which will give us a 11-point unit that will then get boosted up to a 13-point unit, but across all those things, we're not going to have space, so we're going to need to prioritize. They're throwing in another Quartermaster here, but it will get destroyed by Arnaghad, so that is the benefit of having done this. It is a little bit of a difference between the deck that we're using versus the deck that many opponents I've seen have used, those who have used Skellige. Definitely common to see the Quartermasters, as we were just seeing, but not that many people pairing up Arnaghad plus Sukrus, so might have caught them a little bit off guard here. And it's a decent play to go with the Wolf School Witchers here, because Arnaghad will destroy the first one, yes. The other ones that get spawned in will avoid taking damage from Arnaghad, and so they will actually get played here. It does make things awfully close, and because we're running out of space, does mean that things are getting awfully tricky here. Because we're probably looking to, what, reset the range row, I would think, in which case, don't really want to destroy any cards there. Probably looking to destroy a card in the melee row with default Geralt. But then, I mean, that does mean we're not going to have any room for our leader ability either, so probably means on our last turn, we're just not going to have a single card to play here. But next time round, it'll be Geralt Yrden, range row, unless, say, they play something like Leo in melee row, in which case we could potentially reset that. Of course, they'll spawn in additional students, and oh, well, there is Leo. Fortunately, we have Arnaghad dealing some damage to him, and Leo is big enough that he doesn't get outright destroyed from it, but he is below his base strength, so we definitely don't want to reset that melee row there. We'll still stick with the range row. And we have a decent lead here, yes, but as you can see, we're completely out of space, so no leader ability, no Wolf School Witchers. We are largely just hoping that our opponent doesn't have any amazing cards remaining here. They'll use their leader ability, and Yrden is probably the biggest risk here. They very well could have it. The question there would be, does that reset us enough to drop us below the strength that they have? And there is Yrden. Uh-oh. We're about to find out. They go in our range row, and it is not enough. Arnaghad destroying some cards, and that might have been the difference maker here. I mean, we can't play any cards, but it doesn't matter. We have, in fact, taken the victory here. So there's a good example. I mean, our opponent forfeits because they realize they can't pass us, but good example of an occasion on which, yeah, we ran out of space. Fortunately, strong enough that it didn't make much of a difference there, but it could have been a key difference maker there if our opponent was still able to surpass us and we were out of space to play any additional cards. Okay, so we'll be going against another Skellige person here, although they'll be going with a self-damaging leader ability. Be interesting to see how they put that to use here. We'll go first. And in terms of our cards here, probably don't want to have Freya's Blessing in round 1, because we're not going to have very many, if any, cards in our graveyard. Then Bear Witcher, Adept, don't love either of them. Probably want to get rid of one of them. And okay, to get our location is certainly not bad. One swap remaining, and I'm thinking it probably will be the Witcher. And, well, okay, get probably the worst card in our deck, so, yeah, not a great exchange, but we'll put out Yrden of Ulivo first, and then likely location next to get ourselves 2 of our Quartermasters and spawn in a ton of Witcher students that way. And, okay, well, they're going to play a Quartermaster of their own, fitting. But we should be able to outpace them, assuming they don't have a way to shut this down, but I think as long as we get this off here, this is the key, of course, because a lot of times what happens is as soon as you play Yrden of Ulivo, he immediately gets locked, but with 2 Quartermasters, we certainly have more ability to spawn in Witcher students than our opponent does, at least at the moment. And then they're going to throw down, okay, Drum and Shield Maiden makes some sense because when you play it, it'll damage itself, and in doing so, summon the other one from your deck, which is not bad. But still, I'm thinking we are looking good here because we can throw armor up on, say, one of them and spawn in a bunch of Witcher students, and they'll have some armor, which makes them easy targets for our Quartermasters, although because we did already spawn in units when we did the armor up, we ideally want to wait out using those order abilities, try to do 1 per turn in order to get Yrden of Ulivo's ability to trigger every time we do that, because Yrden can only do it once per turn. Then our opponent, hold on. Every time, seemingly every time, I see someone play that card, it is when they're using Lippy, which is potentially cause for concern. Okay, how does that change things here? Let's see. In terms of adrenaline cards in our deck, I mean, Vesemir Mentor probably makes the most sense here. Get some boosts that way. A little bit of carryover as well. But if we are to do that, we want to try to get some additional students out there beforehand. Let's just throw away what is probably our worst card in our hand right now. We'll just deal a little bit of damage there. And we have not yet used our spawning ability, so we'll throw in one of those orders, and I'm not sure we're going to have enough time, to tell the truth, to take it 1 turn at a time on all those orders, because, well, we kind of want to end this round a little bit on the early side here, because we can certainly outpace our opponent with a nearly 50-point advantage here. I'm thinking we probably throw down a Vesemir Mentor next turn and ideally call that a round at that point. That way we'd be forcing our opponent to do a lot in a short amount of time in order to pull off the round 1 victory, which is very much what Lippy'd like to do. But if we pass here, I mean, they basically, they didn't do much to make up the difference there. So I'm thinking we can catch them a little bit off guard here, because Bear Witcher Quartermaster is worth a lot of points, but it does take a turn before you can get all the value out of it. So I think we might have succeeded in this regard, because at least we're going to have to play one more, if not two more cards to catch up to us here. See how they respond, and well, Yrden is one of their best cards, so to get rid of that in a round in which we were prepared to hand to them, probably okay. And that is enough for them to pass us, but I think we'll take that because they are a few cards down here, and I'm thinking we may have disrupted their plan a bit with regard to setting up Lippy. So, on the assumption that they haven't, of course, but I'm feeling pretty confident that they do. So, let's see. We drew into Black Blood, one of the three Wolf School Witchers, but we already had one, so that's less than ideal. And so, we probably should swap one of them out, right? But, Black Blood is also less than ideal, and I forgot about the other Wolf School Witcher, so we have a less than ideal hand here. However, fortunately, our opponent is going to give us the dry pass because, well, they know that they're down on cards, so for that reason, that gives us a little bit of time now to optimize our hand, and we can, say, draw into this Bear Witcher, and then, I mean, we can just dump him because he's not great, and we'll just take next turn, or next round, rather, to optimize our hand, get rid of one of those Wolf School Witchers after that. Because as things are looking right now, I mean, yeah, I mean, we'd like to get the carryover from Vesemir Mentor, but we can certainly make that work in round 3. That'll be fine. So we'll take this round here. Does mean that, of course, we will be going first in round 3, which is not ideal, but I think we can still make it work here. And we draw to, well, cards that we're not thrilled to see here, unfortunately, because we do more or less need to get rid of one of the Wolf School Witchers, so we'll do that here. And to get another Quartermaster is big, because that is a lot of points right there. And, oh, well, okay. Unfortunately, we drew into another one of the Wolf School Witchers, and so we do more or less need to get rid of that. Otherwise, we are making our hand very suboptimal. So to get an Adept out of that is not great, although we do need some targets for our couple of Quartermasters here. So to get a couple of Adepts is not terrible, although we did have Armor Up, which could have been another source of targets for that. So I suppose we'll take it, because rather that than, say, have 2, or for a second we were perhaps even at risk of having 3 of the Wolf School Witchers in our hand simultaneously. And they will Nearmancy into Armor Up. Only in this seasonal event will you see that happen. But, okay, so target, well, the unit that we wanted to have with the armor. But I suppose we have another one of those, so we can get the armor on this one here instead. And then, presumably, oh, yeah, Burn a Brand, okay. So this is, again, certainly looking very Lippy-like here. Discarding some cards that presumably they want to have in their discard pile in order to bring them back with a Lippy, but we've yet to actually see that happen. But now we'll get the Quartermaster out, and that'll be the source of our spawning in additional Witcher students, and now we're building up some of the armor, so we should have plenty of targets for that. There he is, as expected. Swap in their graveyard with their deck, and in the process, giving them what probably were their best cards that they were thrown into their discard pile earlier. And like we were saying, we now have some easy targets for the Quartermasters to hit. So, get in some of those Witcher students. And get that armor back for the second Quartermaster to go round 2 next turn. Well, unless he gets locked, which is not ideal. Not ideal. Although we do, of course, have another source of Witcher students. And we'll exact some revenge on Lippy here. Now, the question is, what else do they have in addition to Lippy now that they've done that deck flip, so to speak? And the Longship, I'm not a huge fan of it in this seasonal event. Of course, yeah, it is a somewhat consistent source of damage, yes, but just not sure that's really going to pay off all that much in the long term. And so now that we have our Witcher students out there, good time to get Vesemir Mentor, because, again, he will boost, yes, sure, the Witchers you have out on the playing field, Witchers you have in your hand and your deck if you wait until you have 5 or fewer cards in your hand, but will not boost the units that you spawn in unless, well, spawn them. They don't exist until you spawn them in, so reason to wait there. Igni. Uh-oh. Where are you using it? Melee row, we had 3 cards with 8 strength. That was, certainly less than ideal timing, at least for us. Good play on their part, of course, but, we do have Arnaghad. unfortunately no Sukrus, which is, of course, the ideal pairing to go along with him. So this is not great. Does mean that we'll likely see Arnaghad destroy whichever card they play next, but we'll probably take Arnaghad down with him, or close to it. So, interesting to see how they respond to this. Of course, they don't necessarily know that we aren't about to play Sukrus to pair up with him, but oh, well done. Geralt Quen will have a shield and therefore will tank the damage from Arnaghad. So Arnaghad will not deal any damage to Geralt, but he will take damage from Geralt. Then Vesemir will also get a shield. So again, same story here. Sukrus, or rather, Arnaghad doesn't deal any damage and just takes damage, taking him out. Wish we had Sukrus. We'll use our Wolf School Witchers. This time we got our hand optimized for that, so fortunately does give us a bit of an advantage here, and we do still have our leader ability, which on this occasion could be a difference maker because they can just damage themselves 5 times, which at least at the moment, not seeing much of a benefit to doing that for them, whereas we get a 13 strength unit, so I'll take that. Now we have Yrden and we have Leo, both of which are cards we want to wait on till late on in the round, and I think we probably go Leo next. He has enough Witchers out there to get boosted considerably, and then we'll go Yrden last. And then, okay, the Skirmisher. Okay, well, this is a card that ideally you would have done the discarding with, but maybe you didn't get your hand to work out exactly the way you wanted it to. So, take a quick look at which row we think is best to reset here. It's kind of hard to tell, because there are certainly more cards in their range row, but some of them are, at least one of them is actually damaged. Some of them are not fully boosted, but the 3 Wolf Witchers rather, are fully boosted, and the Skirmisher is somewhat boosted. Berengar is pretty boosted, Geralt Quen is as well, and those Witcher students are boosted by 3 apiece. So it's close here, but I suppose we'll go for Melee. It looked like it might have had a little bit more boost, and it does give us a fairly large lead here. Let's throw in our leader ability here, and that'll give us 13 strength unit, and yeah, it'll spawn in units on the opposing side, but they're just 1 strength apiece, meaning that they will all get destroyed. So if they have Yrden, we're in a little bit of trouble. But okay, as one might have expected from a Lippy deck, we're looking at Saris here. And fortunately, by making round 1 a little bit of a quick round, we made it so that they couldn't play Saris twice, which is likely what they wanted to do. That's part of the reason why I wanted to make that round quick. But even with Saris, they cannot catch up. So even against Lippy, we can get the victory. Okay, so let's see. We'll go against another Skellige opponent here, and they will go first. And in terms of our starting hand here, we are looking fine on the Wolf School Witchers, so we'll get rid of just our weakest cards here, and Geralt of Rivia is not a bad pickup. Vesemir Mentor, I'll take that. Let's see, they're starting off with an on-crate Longship. They'll deal a little bit of damage to us every time we play a card. Shouldn't be too much of an issue. I think we still drop Idarran first here in anticipation of spawning in a bunch of units. And we're just hoping that he doesn't get immediately locked. But that could very well be our opponent's response. In many ways, that is the best way to respond to him. I've seen a lot of people using Dimeridium Shackles, so oftentimes that is what you see as soon as you throw down Idarran. But it's actually Blue Boy Lugos here. So perhaps some self-damage. I mean, as soon as you play him, he's not a Witcher, so he will take some damage and deals damage to Idarran in that way. But we'll spawn in our Bear Witcher Mentor, and because we have Idarran out there, create 2 of them. So we'll take it. Now, we'll see if they have any way to respond to that. And Idarran can only spawn in 1 additional unit per turn, so of course we want to try to space out those order abilities from the Quartermasters 1 per turn, which means this will take us a little bit of time to get all those off if we are optimizing it in that way. And yeah, okay, they do have a way of damaging Blue Boy Lugos pretty consistently. But I think we can still keep pace with that. I'm reluctant to put down a 3rd Quartermaster because we almost certainly would not have space for that, but then again, we have a couple of armor ups in our hand as well, so we are going to use up pretty much all of our space very, very quickly here. Suppose throw in the armor up, and here come the Witcher students. And we could even do another one of those next turn. Otherwise, I mean, we do want to at least have some time to get those order abilities off from the Quartermasters, but you can throw those in, throw in another armor up, and then we're probably out of space already. So we probably do want to try to make this a relatively quick round. Otherwise, we are going to find ourselves in a bit of trouble running out of space to play any additional units. They will continue to deal some damage with Blue Boy Lugus whenever they damage him, and they are dealing damage to him every turn. But let's see, as for what we go for here, Vesemir Mentor could be strong, because we will have a lot of Witchers out there, but it's just a matter of timing. We'd like to get more of the Witcher students spawned in before we do that. In which case, well, what other cards could we potentially get with from a Selective Mutation standpoint? I guess Arnaghad, although we don't have Sukrus, so it's less than ideal. Maybe we plan long term, because we do need to bide some time before we can use Vesemir Mentor, at least to the greatest effect, because he's Adrenaline 5. And so I'm thinking on this occasion we might actually get rid of one of what would normally be our strongest cards, that being an Armor Up, because, like we were saying, there just isn't enough space to put it to use in this round. So we'll save it for a future round instead. And that did spawn in some additional Witcher students when we used Selective Mutation, so that is still putting Idarran to good use there. And that's some pretty slow damage that they just played there, so thinking this is looking like a pretty good setup for an early-ish pass. Vesemir Mentor is now fair game, because we will have 5 cards in our hand as soon as we play him. We do, however, want to get as many Witcher students out as possible beforehand, so let's do that now. Sure, Idarran will only spawn in an additional Witcher student for one of those, but because we're about to run out of time in which to do that, let's do all of the orders right now, because I'm thinking play Vesemir Mentor, and then ideally we pass next turn, unless our opponent does something crazy to dramatically change their plan. But with as much of a point advantage as we have right now, I'm not thinking they're catching up to us anytime soon. And yep, they realize it. They pass. And so, sure, I suppose we'll do it too. And in fact, we're on even cards here, so we can even play in round 2, no problem. And we did save some of our better cards for this round, so looking good in that regard. Oh, we do have Sukrus as well. What am I saying? We can go Sukrus plus Arnaghad, so that's a nice ace we have up our sleeve. And then we could also, well, Bear Witcher Adept, yeah, let's probably dump that. And then Bear Witcher Mentor is also less than ideal, although we don't really want to switch him out here, because there is the chance that we could find ourselves drawing into a second one of the Wolf School Witchers, which would be not so great. So when we only have one switch remaining, and we have already one of the Wolf School Witchers in our hand, we want to be a little bit careful of that. We do have the ability to play a Quartermaster with Freya's Blessing, so let's do that here. And that is a quick way to get at some points, because, of course, Quartermaster's 8 strength himself, and then we'll spawn in a bunch of Witcher students next turn. So we might be able to catch our opponent a little bit flat-footed there, because we did take the round 1 victory there, and like we said, we're on even cards here for round 2, so we can play aggressively. No problem there. We could even play our second Quartermaster next, maybe? The Handmaid Protector is, of the 4 provision cost units, maybe second or third best for Skellige, so not bad, but it's not going to be fast enough to keep pace with this, I'm afraid. And we have the 1 armor on the other Quartermaster, so we'll hit him, but we would ideally like to have some other armored or units that are next to Sukrus, so don't take damage in that way, and with Sukrus in our hand, we'll probably wait for that. Okay, and Herkia, yeah, I mean, consistent, albeit somewhat slow damage. I still don't really think you're going to be able to keep pace with this. So I think Sukrus plus Arnaghad is certainly not far away here. Let's play Sukrus first, and then next turn we'll play Arnaghad, and he will have the Adrenaline 4 trigger in, so we can now hit those Witcher students next to Sukrus and have them not take any damage in the process, so some free spawning there. Don't worry about the self-damage at all. And then our opponent is going to need to find something pretty dramatic here to catch up, because it seems as though the distance is only increasing between the two of us. Oh, hold on. They have a Sukrus of their own? Okay, so that does make Sukrus plus Arnaghad potentially problematic here, because, of course, the benefit of doing this is that by playing Arnaghad next to Sukrus, we are hoping that our opponent will take damage whenever they play a unit and get destroyed in the process. However, if they play all their cards next to Sukrus, then they can just guarantee that they don't take any damage, and we could find ourselves in a bit of a stalemate here. Now, of course, we do already have far more strength than our opponents, so that could be the difference maker here. And we'll have to see. Yeah, they have an Arnaghad of their own. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So it is like for like in that regard, and you'll see both of them try to damage each other, but they're both next to Sukrus, so nothing's going to happen there. They do have some consistent damage with Herkia, but we have enough of a difference here that I think that will work. We could go with the Wolf School Witchers, because the first one will get destroyed by Arnaghad, yes. However, the subsequent ones will get summoned in and won't get damaged, but I'm thinking what we do here is we pass. We have enough of a difference between us that our opponent is going to have to play numerous cards to try to catch up to us, and then they're going to have enough of a card disadvantage going into round 3 that I think that will be enough of a difference for us to take the round 3 victory here. So we benefited from sprinting out to a quick start and then setting up our strong Arnaghad plus Sukrus combo, whereas they had a slower start and then went to the Arnaghad Sukrus combo. And they've already played 2 more cards than us, and they still haven't caught up here. So they could have potentially used Herkia Drummond's ability there, and would it have been quite enough? No, they might have been 1 short. That means they have to play another card here, and that means they are 3 cards down going into round 3. Surely we can make that work then. We did, yes, have to use what was a nice combo with Arnaghad plus Sukrus, but I'm thinking that we should still have enough to get the job done here fairly simply. Now, we did draw into another one of the Wolf School Witchers, which is less than ideal, so we do need to swap one of them out. And then we can't really swap any other cards here because we're at risk of drawing into another one of those Wolf School Witchers, so not a perfect hand by any means, but I suppose with 3 extra cards to spare, I'd have to imagine we can still get the job done here. So, let's see, to lead things off here, I suppose go with the Adept, because, well, it'll at least get some armor. I mean, shouldn't matter too much the order of operations. We just want to make sure that we get the Black Blood out there early enough that our opponent will still be playing some cards, so that that next card they play will actually get destroyed in the process, because, of course, if they played all their cards already, Black Blood is not really going to do anything. Okay, and some more relatively slow damage. And on the Adept is probably not really the unit you want to have that going on, because, well, it can heal itself and give itself armor. So we'll throw down Black Blood, which we're thinking will destroy whichever unit they play next. So we're hoping it is a big unit that they were saving up to play, waiting to use until the very end for their dramatic come-from-behind victory, but hopefully put a little bit of a monkey wrench in their plans here. They have Morkvarg, which is also less than ideal here, because it will damage unit until it is damaged, but, well, our Bear Witcher was already damaged, and then Morkvarg also got destroyed by Black Blood, so does quite literally nothing. And then, sure, we'll throw out our other weakest unit here, we'll deal some damage, and we're already in the lead here, and our opponent has just 1 card to spare, and we have 4. So, looking like we got this one down pat. Dagger is an interesting play here. I did consider putting it in this deck, because if you pair it with the leader ability here, it does get boosted quite a bit in the process, but, well, I'm afraid to say we do have precisely the counter to this, so, hope you don't mind if we just crush your dreams for a second here and throw down Geralt of Rivia and destroy it. And, well, I mean, we are surprisingly still tied here, but we do, of course, have 3 cards remaining, and we can just delete that. Oh, okay, well, our opponent has realized that, yeah, they stand no chance, and they have forfeited. So, there you have it. Arnaghad plus Sukrus, very good, especially when you can back up that strategy with a ton of Witcher students to spawn in. Okay, let's see. So, we're going against Northern Realms here, and they will go first. And in terms of our starting hand, we have a couple of Quartermasters. Like to see that. Armor up, also good source of spawning in Witcher students. Fair Witcher, let's try getting rid of you. Okay, one of the Wolf School Witchers, that's fine, but it does mean that we are a little bit handicapped here. Don't really want to swap anything out because we're at risk of drawing into another one of those, and having more than 1 Wolf School Witcher in our hand simultaneously is never a good idea, so we'll leave it at that. Okay, Round of Editorial Guards is, well, I mean, it's something, but it's a relatively modest play. So I would think we'd be able to outpace you here. I mean, let's just, like, throw out an armor up and get a bunch of those Witcher students out there. And, try to demoralize you a little bit with that. And we can get a Quartermaster out there, of course, and those will be some early targets to use the Quartermaster's abilities, because we'll deal 1 damage to units with armor. Don't need to worry about actually dealing damage to ourselves in that case. See how they respond to that in that case. And, well, they're going to go with another Royal Guard. So, okay, those are a couple of 4 provision cost cards, and I mean, in Standard, they are decent 4 provision cost cards, yes, but in this seasonal event, I mean, they aren't Witchers, so they don't really have that much special going on. Throw out our Adept here to get some armor going to give us another solid target for our Quartermasters, and at this point we should have enough armor that we're more or less good to go here. We do have another Adept, so I suppose we could throw that one out as well. Is generally a good idea to get those out early. Okay, Dun Banner. Interesting, because when it gets boosted, it summons the other one from your deck, and so it will immediately get that out there. So good to thin your deck, yes, but still, just in terms of raw strength here, not a lot. So still kind of wondering what you're waiting to play here. So get a Quartermaster out, and like I said, we do have certainly the units out there to use the order on, because plenty of armor at the moment. But it does seem as if our opponent is, for the most part, just playing low provision cost cards, and okay, maybe saving up for something like this. Yrden of Ulivo, potentially one of their biggest cards here. Now, we do have both Geralt of Rivia and Geralt Yrden, which could both be strong counters to it, because they played it early enough that it does not have immunity, so we could just outright destroy him with Geralt of Rivia if, say, they were to use the order ability. Get our second Quartermaster out there, and start using those order abilities. Spawn in the Witcher students. And Yrden of Ulivo is interesting, because if you do wait to use the order ability, we're stuck in a bit of a limbo there, waiting to see, are you gonna activate it and have a bunch of strength in this round, or are you gonna wait and have a bunch of carryover? Now, they destroyed our Witcher Adept, which doesn't really cause much concern. So, I mean, we could make another one if we really wanted to, but let's get the students out there. And then from here, we could even play Berengar, because we're starting to run out of space here. And we certainly have enough Witchers in this range row here to not be concerned about running out of all of them. So Berengar is definitely safe. But I'm thinking we have enough of a lead that, well, we're looking pretty decent here. We just are, for the most part, on the lookout for what is our opponent going to do with Yrden of Ulivo here. Okay, and Geralt Quen. What are you going to do with that? Get Vesemir Mentor. Okay. So boosting a bunch of cards on your side then. Well, actually, you don't have too many Witchers out here. So it's not doing that much boosting for this round. So that's interesting. And you did use Yrden of Ulivo's ability here, so I think we absolutely just outright destroy you. And we're probably looking to pass in the not-so-distant future in that case, because we've now destroyed what is one of, if not your best cards. Okay, now we're getting you to play what is probably your other best card. And you did pass us in the process, yes. But we could probably find a way to still take this round one. If we say we're to go with Lambert, that is probably our biggest one-turn play. Or we could play it a little bit more patiently and go with like the Bear Witcher Adept. Red Haze, maybe a little bit of a safer play as well. Or slower, more conservative play. Let's go with a big one here with the Wolf School Witchers. And it does mean we'll pass our opponent in one turn, which I think is ideal here. We'd like to keep them on the ropes. And after they've played most of their big cards, we'd like to believe they don't have a great way to catch up to us. Although Berengar does have a lot of strength, yes. I would like to respond to this. Red Haze is, I'd like to get rid of that, because I'd like to save Geralt Yrden. Oh, and our opponent says, you know what? You've destroyed all of our best cards. Not sure we can come back from that, and so they forfeit. So, okay, a short one, yes, but I suppose after getting rid of Yrden of Ulivo, that was maybe enough. They didn't think they could get the job done. So there's the look at a Skellige Witcher-themed deck for the new Trial of the Grasses seasonal event. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards and decks you'd like us to experiment with in this seasonal event going forward. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.